begin in ancient castles hidden beneath mist. Others unfold deep within forests where few people ever walk. But occasionally, the greatest mysteries begin in places that seem almost ordinary. A grassy hill overlooking a busy city. A narrow footpath winding through tropical vegetation. A quiet afternoon beneath an endless Brazilian sky. No one passing that hill in the summer of 1966 could have imagined it would soon become one of South America's most puzzling unsolved cases. More than half a century later, investigators, historians, journalists, and researchers still return to the same question. Not because the mystery became larger with time, but because the answers never became clearer. This is the story of the Lead Masks case. A case built not only upon unexplained events, but upon ordinary lives suddenly interrupted by extraordinary questions. To understand the mystery, we must first understand the world in which it unfolded. Brazil in the 1960s was a nation of remarkable contrasts. Modern cities expanded rapidly while traditional communities continued much as they had for generations. Glass office buildings stood only a short distance from quiet fishing villages. New highways carried automobiles past colonial churches that had watched over the land for centuries. Industry was growing. Technology was advancing. Yet faith, folklore, and spiritual traditions remained deeply woven into everyday life. It was a country looking confidently toward the future without entirely letting go of its past. Across the broad waters of Guanabara Bay lay the city of Niterói. Facing the larger metropolis of Rio de Janeiro, Niterói possessed its own quiet rhythm. Commuters crossed the bay each morning. Fishing boats returned before sunrise. Street vendors prepared fresh fruit beneath colorful market awnings. Children hurried to school beneath tall palm trees. The sea was never far away. Its salty breeze drifted through nearly every neighborhood. The sound of gulls became part of daily life. To visitors, Niterói appeared peaceful. A coastal city blessed with beautiful views and warm weather. A place where hills rose gently above the Atlantic, offering sweeping panoramas of water, islands, and distant mountains. One such hill overlooked much of the city. Its official name was Morro do Ventum. To local residents, it was simply another green hillside, a place where children sometimes wandered, where adventurous hikers climbed narrow trails, where neighbors occasionally paused to admire the views stretching toward Rio's glittering skyline. Nothing about the hill suggested it would soon become known around the world. During daylight, Morro do Ventum appeared almost welcoming. Wild grasses swayed softly in the breeze, small trees clung to rocky slopes. Butterflies floated lazily through warm afternoon air. Birdsong echoed from hidden branches. From the summit, the city below seemed almost miniature. White buildings reflected bright tropical sunlight. The bay shimmered like polished glass. Ships moved slowly across the water. The scene inspired calm rather than fear. Yet history has often shown that peaceful landscapes can conceal extraordinary stories. The summer of 1966 passed much like any other. Markets remained busy. Families gathered for evening meals. Radio stations filled homes with music and news. Television was becoming increasingly common, though many households still relied upon newspapers and radio broadcasts for information. Scientific discoveries fascinated the public. The space race dominated headlines around the world. Only 3 years earlier, astronaut Gordon Cooper had completed one of NASA's Mercury missions. Preparations for future lunar exploration captured imaginations everywhere. People looked toward the heavens with curiosity. Could humanity soon walk upon the moon? Might intelligent life exist elsewhere among the stars? These questions were no longer confined to science fiction. They entered ordinary conversations, coffeehouses, university classrooms, family dinner tables. The sky itself seemed full of possibility. Brazil shared this excitement. Newspapers frequently reported developments in astronomy, aviation, and technology. At the same time, interest in spiritualism remained widespread. The teachings of Allan Kardec, whose ideas had gained a significant following in Brazil, encouraged many people to explore questions about consciousness, the afterlife, and unseen dimensions of existence. For some, science and spirituality were not opposites. They were simply different paths toward understanding the unknown. This unique cultural atmosphere would later become an important part of the lead mask story. Not because it explained the mystery, but because it shaped the ideas people brought to it. The mid-1960s also witnessed a growing fascination with unidentified aerial phenomena. Reports of unusual lights occasionally appeared in newspapers across the world. Most were eventually explained, some remained uncertain. Whether viewed as misunderstood natural events, experimental aircraft, or something more mysterious, such reports captured public imagination. Books discussing visitors from other worlds sold in impressive numbers. Radio programs debated extraordinary claims. Films portrayed humanity's first encounters with life beyond Earth. In this environment, almost any unexplained event quickly attracted speculation. The lead mask's case would become one of the most famous examples. Yet when our story begins, none of those headlines exist. No investigators climb the hillside. No journalists interview witnesses. No photographers gather at the scene. Morro do Vintém remain, the wolves jump across sunlit grass. A hawk circles high above the valley. Cloud shadows drift lazily over the landscape. Everything appears perfectly ordinary. Imagine standing upon that hill in late August. The afternoon sun hangs low above Guanabara Bay. The ocean glitters beyond the city. A faint scent of salt and warm earth fills the air. Below, buses travel busy streets. Children laugh in distant neighborhoods. Dogs bark somewhere among the houses. Life continues exactly as it always has. Nothing suggests that history is quietly approaching. Nothing hints that this peaceful hillside will soon appear in newspapers around the world. One of history's greatest lessons is that extraordinary events rarely announce themselves. There is no warning, no dramatic music, no sudden change in the weather. Only ordinary hours flowing into ordinary days. Until something happens that no one expected. And afterward, every ordinary detail suddenly seems important. Investigators ask questions that no one thought to ask before. Who walked this path? Who spoke with whom? Who noticed something unusual? Memories become evidence. Conversations become timelines. Simple decisions acquire unexpected significance. This transformation from ordinary life to enduring mystery has occurred countless times throughout history. The Mary Celeste drifting silently across the Atlantic. The Flannan Isles lighthouse standing empty against the Scottish Sea. The Dyatlov Pass high in Russia's frozen mountains. Each began with people living ordinary lives before circumstances changed forever. The lead masks case belongs to that same tradition, not because it offers supernatural certainty, but because it reminds us how quickly certainty can disappear. As evening approaches, long shadows stretch across Morro do Ventum. The tropical heat softens, birdsong gradually fades. Lights begin appearing in homes below. The city prepares for another peaceful night. Parents call children indoors. Restaurants fill with conversation. Fishing boats return to harbor. From above, Niterói glows warmly beneath the first stars of evening. It is a beautiful sight, one that has changed remarkably little despite the passing decades. Yet somewhere within that peaceful city live two men whose names history will never forget. They are not famous. They are not wealthy. They do not seek attention. They are ordinary citizens with technical knowledge, curious minds, and interests that extend beyond the routines of everyday life. Friends describe them as intelligent, reliable, respectful. They work with electronics. They enjoy discussing scientific ideas. They also share an interest in spiritual subjects that many people in Brazil explored during the era. This combination of practical engineering and philosophical curiosity makes them unusual but not unique. Thousands of thoughtful people balance those same interests. Their names are Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz. In the days ahead, they will make a journey to Niterói. A journey that appears simple, routine, even. Yet investigators will later examine every step they take, every purchase, every conversation, every hour. Because somewhere along that journey, something happens that no investigation has ever completely explained. For now, however, they remain ordinary men living ordinary lives. They cannot know that researchers more than 50 years in the future will still speak their names. That books will be written, documentaries filmed, theories proposed. They cannot know that one small object to simple homemade lead-eye masks will become one of the most recognizable symbols in the history of unexplained mysteries. Night settles gently over Niterói. The breeze carries the scent of the Atlantic inland. Only insects continue their evening chorus. Below, the lights of the city shimmer across Guanabara Bay, reflecting softly upon calm water. Everything appears peaceful. Everything appears unchanged, but history is already moving. Slowly, silently, toward the morning when two ordinary men will begin a journey that ends in one of Brazil's greatest unsolved mysteries. Every great mystery has a beginning. Not the moment investigators arrive, not the moment newspapers print dramatic headlines, but the ordinary days before everything changed. The routines that, in hindsight, seem filled with quiet significance. For the lead masks case, those ordinary days belonged to two men whose lives gave little indication that they would one day become the center of one of Brazil's most enduring mysteries. Their names were Miguel Jose Viana, aged 34, and Manuel Pereira da Cruz, aged 32. Both lived in the city of Campos dos Goitacazes, in the state of Rio de Janeiro. It was a city known for its sugarcane fields, growing industries, and hard-working communities. Unlike the glamour often associated with Rio de Janeiro, Campos moved at a quieter pace. people knew their neighbors. Families gathered in the evenings. Small workshops and repair businesses formed an important part of daily life. Miguel and Manuel were part of that world. The two men worked as electronics technicians. It was skilled work requiring patience, precision, and curiosity. During the 1960s, electronics represented one of the most exciting fields of technology. Radios connected families to national news. Televisions brought moving images into living rooms. Transmitters and receivers became increasingly sophisticated. Repairing such equipment demanded careful attention to detail. Friends later described both men as intelligent and capable. They understood circuits, electrical components, signal transmission. They were practical people who solved technical problems every day. Their profession also reflected a larger transformation taking place around the world. Technology was advancing rapidly. The space race inspired countless young people to explore science and engineering. New inventions appeared almost every year. Electronics seemed to promise a future that only a generation earlier would have appeared impossible. It was a time when curiosity was celebrated, when asking difficult questions was considered a strength rather than a weakness. Miguel and Manuel belonged to that generation of curious minds. Yet their interests extended beyond engineering alone. Like many Brazilians of the era, they were interested in spiritual philosophy and the possibility that science had not yet explained every aspect of human experience. This was not unusual. Brazil has long had a vibrant tradition of spiritual inquiry, including spiritism inspired by the writings of Allan Kardec. Discussion groups met in homes. People debated ideas about consciousness, life after death, and humanity's place in the universe. Some believed scientific progress and spiritual exploration could exist side by side. To them, one did not necessarily contradict the other. It is important to understand this cultural context. Later retellings of the lead mask's case sometimes portray the two men as members of secret organizations or participants in dangerous occult practices. The historical evidence does not support many of these dramatic claims. Instead, available records suggest they were technically skilled individuals with an interest in subjects that many thoughtful people discussed during the 1960s. As with many famous mysteries, rumor gradually grew larger than documented fact. Separating the two remains one of the historian's most important responsibilities. Those who knew Miguel remembered him as dependable. He approached problems methodically. If a radio failed to work, he examined each component carefully until the fault revealed itself. Friends described Manuel in similar terms. Respectful, patient. The two worked well together because they trusted one another. That trust would later become significant. When investigators reconstructed their final journey, every decision appeared to have been made together. There was no indication of disagreement. No sign that one intended to deceive the other. Whatever happened on Morro do Vintum, the evidence suggested they faced it side by side. In the days before their journey, life continued normally. Customers brought radios for repair. Workshops remained busy. The streets of Campas echoed with familiar sounds. Children played outside after school. Cyclists rode past small shops. Vendors called out their daily offerings. Nothing about those final ordinary days suggested they would soon become part of Brazilian history. On the morning of August 17, 1966, the two men prepared for a trip to Niterói. The journey covered several hundred kilometers. Such travel was not impossible, but it required planning. Family members later recalled that the purpose of the trip involved purchasing electronic equipment. This explanation matched their profession. Technicians frequently traveled to larger cities where specialized components were easier to obtain. The plan appeared reasonable, entirely ordinary. Before leaving, one detail quietly entered the historical record. Manuel's wife reportedly gave him money for the trip and reminded him to be careful. It was a simple exchange, one repeated in countless households every day. Travel safely. Come home soon. Neither could know those ordinary words would later be remembered with heartbreaking clarity. The journey itself unfolded beneath clear Brazilian skies. Roads wound through changing landscapes. Small towns gave way to open countryside. Mountains appeared on the horizon. Occasional roadside cafes welcomed travelers seeking rest before continuing onward. Miguel and Manuel likely discussed work, perhaps electronics, perhaps family, perhaps the many scientific ideas that interested them both. No record survives of those conversations. History preserves only silence. As the hours passed, the two men approached the greater Rio de Janeiro region. Traffic increased. Buildings became more numerous. The Great Bay reflected brilliant afternoon sunlight. Ferries crossed the water. The skyline shimmered in the distance. Niterói waited across the bay. Bustling, warm, alive. At approximately mid-afternoon, one documented event occurred that investigators would later examine closely. The two men entered a local shop and purchased waterproof raincoats. The purchase puzzled investigators because the weather that day was reportedly warm and dry. No rain threatened. The sky remained largely clear. Why buy raincoats? Several explanations exist. Perhaps they expected changing weather later in the evening. Perhaps the coats served another practical purpose. Perhaps the purchase had nothing to do with the mystery at all. The evidence provides no definitive answer. Yet, because every documented action later became part of the investigation, even this ordinary purchase attracted attention. Shortly afterward, they visited another establishment where they purchased a bottle of mineral water. Witnesses later remembered the encounter because of an unusual request involving change for payment. It seemed insignificant at the time. Only later, after newspapers published photographs and investigators interviewed customers, did those small memories become pieces of a much larger puzzle. This is often how history works. No one recognizes the importance of a moment while it is happening. Only afterward does memory search for meaning. From there, Miguel and Manuel continued toward Morro do Vintum. The hill rose quietly above the surrounding neighborhoods, just as it always had. The path leading upward remained narrow. Grasses swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. The city stretched below, sparkling beneath the tropical sun. To anyone watching from a distance, the two men would have appeared like ordinary visitors enjoying a climb to admire the view. No one called the police. No one suspected danger. Nothing seemed unusual. Yet somewhere during those final hours, the historical record grows uncertain. Witnesses later offered observations. Some recalled seeing the men walking together. Others remembered distant figures on the hillside. Investigators carefully compared these accounts, searching for consistency. As in many historical investigations, not every memory aligned perfectly. People described events honestly as they remembered them. But memory is rarely flawless. especially after unexpected tragedy. One witness reportedly noticed the two men ascending the hill while dressed in their newly purchased raincoats. Despite the warm weather, the image struck observers as unusual. Still, unusual does not necessarily mean suspicious. Travelers often make practical decisions that seem odd to strangers. The significance of the raincoats would emerge only later. As evening slowly approached, sunlight soft across the landscape, long shadows stretched through the grass. The city below continued its familiar rhythm. Buses carried commuters home. Families prepared evening meals. Fishing boats returned across Guanabara Bay. No one realized that the peaceful hill overlooking the city was quietly becoming the setting for one of Brazil's greatest unsolved mysteries. The wind moved gently across Morro do Vintum. Palm trees swayed below. The Atlantic shimmered beyond the rooftops of Niterói. Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz continued their climb together, step by step, toward a place where history would soon ask questions that, decades later, still remain unanswered. Some places change forever because of a single day. A quiet country road, a forgotten house, a lonely mountain pass. Before history arrives, these places are ordinary. Afterward, every stone, every tree, and every path seems to carry a memory. Morro do Vintum would become one of those places. For generations afterward, local residents would remember the hill not for its beautiful view of Guanabara Bay, but for the mystery that unfolded there during the final days of August 1966. Yet on the morning when the discovery was made, no one climbed the hill expecting to uncover one of Brazil's greatest unsolved mysteries. The day began quietly, like so many others before it. The Brazilian winter was gentle compared with the harsh winters experienced elsewhere in the world. The air remained mild. The sky stretched bright and blue above Niterói. Sunlight reflected from the waters of the bay. Children played outside. Street vendors opened their stalls. Ferries crossed between Niterói and Rio de Janeiro, carrying commuters. Beginning another ordinary day, life continued without interruption. No newspaper headlines hinted that history was waiting just beyond the city's edge. Morro do Vintum overlooked much of the surrounding landscape. Its slopes were covered with grasses, scattered shrubs, and patches of exposed rock. A narrow footpath wound toward the summit, used occasionally by hikers, local residents, and children exploring the hillside from above. The view was breathtaking. The city spread outward beneath the hill. Ships crossed the bay. Mountains framed the distant horizon. It was a place people visited to admire nature rather than to fear it. Among those who knew the hill well were local youths who often climbed its slopes. The hill offered adventure, fresh air, and a welcome escape from the busy streets below. For them, it was simply another afternoon of exploration, nothing more. As they made their way upward, the warm breeze carried the scent of grass and earth. Birds called from nearby trees. The city sounds faded behind them. Everything felt peaceful. Then they noticed something unusual. At first, it was only a shape among the rocks. Two figures lying motionless on the hillside. From a distance, it was difficult to understand what they were seeing, perhaps to people resting. Perhaps hikers enjoying the afternoon. Nothing immediately suggested alarm. But as they moved closer, concern replaced curiosity. The figures did not move. They did not respond. Silence surrounded them. News of the discovery spread quickly. Adults soon arrived. Authorities were notified. Police officers began the climb toward the location. For investigators, the first moments at any scene are among the most important. Everything is carefully observed. Nothing is assumed. Every detail may later become significant. The hill, once quiet and forgotten, suddenly filled with questions. The two men were identified as Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz, the electronics technicians who had traveled from Campos dos Goitacazes several days earlier. They lay side by side on the grassy slope. Both wore formal clothing beneath waterproof raincoats. The weather, according to contemporary reports, had been dry. This immediately attracted attention. Why wear raincoats on a warm afternoon? Investigators noted the detail carefully. Whether it held real significance remained uncertain. Another object soon became the focus of intense interest. Each man wore a small homemade mask fashioned from lead. The masks covered the eyes but left the rest of the face exposed. Unlike protective goggles used in laboratories or workshops, these masks appeared to have been cut by hand from thin sheets of lead. There were no lensers, no straps around the head. Simply shaped pieces of metal designed to shield the eyes. The purpose of the masks was not immediately understood. Even today, historians continue to debate why they were made. The discovery of the masks transformed what might otherwise have appeared to be an ordinary unexplained death into something far more puzzling. Police officers had encountered unusual circumstances before, but nothing quite like this. Questions multiplied almost immediately. Had the masks served a practical purpose? Were they intended to protect the eyes from bright light, radiation, chemicals? Or did they relate to some experiment known only to the two men themselves? No answer presented itself. Only possibilities. Investigators carefully searched the surrounding area. The hillside showed no obvious signs of a violent struggle. Personal belongings remained nearby. Money had not been taken. Watches and identification were still present. There was no immediate evidence suggesting robbery. This observation shaped the early direction of the investigation. If theft had not been the motive, what had happened? Among the personal items recovered was a small notebook. Inside, officers discovered a handwritten message. It was brief, cryptic. Its wording would become famous around the world. In translation, it is commonly rendered as 1630 be at the agreed place, 1830 ingest capsules. After the effect, protect metals, await signal. Mask. The original Portuguese wording has been translated slightly differently by various historians. But the meaning remains essentially the same. The note offered instructions. Yet it explained almost nothing. What capsules? What signal? What metals required protection? Who had written the message? One of the two men. Someone else. Investigators immediately recognized its importance. It appeared to describe a planned sequence of events. But without context, the instructions resembled fragments from a much larger story. The notebook became one of the central pieces of evidence. Researchers have examined its wording for decades. Some viewed it as evidence of a scientific experiment. Others believed it suggested participation in a spiritual or paranormal ritual. Still others proposed far more ordinary explanations connected with technical work. The note itself revealed no definitive answer. It merely raised additional questions. As police documented the scene, another challenge emerged. Determining the exact cause of death would prove difficult. By the time the bodies were discovered, several days had passed. Environmental conditions complicated forensic examination. The technology available in 1966 also differed greatly from modern standards. Investigators worked carefully with the resources they possessed, yet some evidence had already been lost to time. This unfortunate reality would influence the investigation for decades to come. News reporters soon arrived. Photographers climbed the hillside carrying heavy cameras. The image of the lead masks immediately captured public imagination. Within days, newspapers across Brazil published dramatic headlines. Soon, international media followed. The combination of two electronics technicians, homemade lead-eye masks, and a mysterious handwritten note seemed unlike any ordinary police investigation. Readers naturally wanted explanations. Unfortunately, explanations were in short supply. As often happens in famous cases, speculation began almost immediately. Some articles suggested secret scientific experiments. Others hinted at hidden organizations. Still others linked the deaths to reports of unusual lights seen in the region. Many of these claims were based on rumor rather than verified evidence. The public, however, rarely distinguishes between careful investigation and exciting speculation. Once a dramatic theory appears in print, it often takes on a life of its own. The investigators faced a difficult task. Their responsibility was not to confirm extraordinary stories. Their responsibility was to establish facts. Who were these men? Why had they traveled to Niterói? What had they intended to accomplish? Who, if anyone, had last seen them alive? Every interview mattered. Every receipt, every witness, every document. The puzzle had many pieces, most seemed unrelated. Yet somewhere among them lay the truth. As evening settled once more over Morro do Vintum, police officers completed their initial examination. The sun dipped toward the horizon. Long shadows crossed the hillside. Below, the lights of Niterói began appearing one by one. The city resumed its ordinary rhythm, restaurants filled with conversation. Families gathered for dinner. Cars moved steadily through the streets. Life continued. Yet above the city, the quiet hill had changed forever. Its name would now appear in newspapers around the world. Not because anyone had expected it, but because the ordinary men had left behind a mystery that refused to yield easy answers. The wind continued moving gently through the tall grass. The bay reflected the last golden light of day. The handmade lid masks rested among carefully catalogued evidence. The cryptic notebook waited to be studied. And somewhere within the growing collection of witness statements, receipts, and unanswered questions, investigators hoped they might eventually discover a simple explanation. But history often reminds us that not every mystery offers simple answers. Some remain suspended between certainty and speculation, waiting quietly for the next clue. Every investigation begins with hope. Hope that careful observation will reveal what first appears impossible to understand. Hope that every witness will remember one more detail. Hope that every document, every receipt, Every small object left behind might connect with another piece of the puzzle. For the investigators assigned to the lead mask's case, those hopes were genuine. This was not merely another police file. Two respected electronics technicians had traveled hundreds of kilometers, climbed a quiet hillside, and died under circumstances that seemed unlike anything the detectives had encountered before. The task now was not to solve a legend. It was to solve a real case involving two real men. The first days after the discovery were filled with careful routine. Photographs were examined. Evidence was cataloged. Witnesses were interviewed one after another. Detectives retraced Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz's known movements through Niterói. Every stop mattered. Every purchase, every conversation. Every person who remembered seeing the two men together. Unlike in modern investigations, there were no surveillance cameras to review. No mobile phone records. No GPS data. The investigation depended almost entirely upon human memory and handwritten records. One of the earliest confirmed discoveries came from local shopkeepers. Several witnesses remembered the two technicians because of their polite manner and because they had purchased unusual items shortly before heading toward Morro do Vintum. The waterproof raincoats. The bottle of mineral water. Neither purchase seemed suspicious at the time. Only afterward did they become significant. Detectives carefully compared witness statements, searching for consistency. Although recollections differed in small details, as memories often do, the overall sequence appeared reliable. The two men had arrived together. They had made their purchases together. They had continued toward the hill together. Nothing suggested conflict between them. Investigators next focused on the notebook. The handwritten instructions immediately stood apart from everything else recovered at the scene. The words were short, practical, almost like a checklist prepared before beginning a technical experiment. The line mentioning capsules attracted particular attention. What capsules? Where had they come from? Had the men obtained them in Compass, purchased them in Niterói, or had another person supplied them? Police searched carefully for containers, wrappers, or remaining capsules. None were found. The hillside yielded no obvious trace of the substance described in the note. This absence became one of the investigation's greatest frustrations. Without the capsules, investigators faced a difficult problem. If the note referred to medication, chemicals, or another substance, identifying it might explain everything. But no physical evidence remained. Some researchers have suggested the capsules could have dissolved naturally or been removed before the bodies were discovered. Others argue they may never have existed in the form investigators imagined. The historical record cannot answer this question with certainty. Forensic science in 1966 was capable of careful examination, but it lacked many of the technologies available today. Modern laboratories routinely analyze microscopic traces of DNA, identify complex chemical compounds, and reconstruct events using advanced digital techniques. Such methods did not exist at the time. Investigators relied upon careful observation, toxicological testing available during the era, and the expertise of medical examiners. They worked diligently with the tools they had. Yet some questions proved impossible to resolve. One of the most challenging aspects of the case involved determining the exact cause of death. By the time the bodies were discovered, several days had passed. Exposure to the environment complicated the examination. reports from the period indicate that no obvious traumatic injuries explained what had happened. Equally important, investigators did not immediately identify a clear toxic substance responsible for the deaths. This absence of a definitive medical conclusion allowed speculation to flourish. When science cannot provide certainty, imagination often fills the empty space. The lead masks themselves underwent careful examination. Contrary to some sensational retellings, they were relatively simple objects. Thin sheets of lead had been cut into shapes that covered the eyes. They contained no lenses, no electronics, no hidden mechanisms. Investigators found nothing inherently mysterious about their construction. The mystery lay in their purpose. Why protect only the eyes? Lead has long been used to shield against certain forms of radiation, but the masks offered only limited coverage. Were they symbolic, practical, experimental? No document recovered from the scene answered these questions. As detectives continued interviewing family members and friends, a more detailed picture of Miguel and Manuel began to emerge. Both men had shown a genuine interest in electronics and technical experimentation. Several acquaintances also spoke of their curiosity regarding spiritual ideas and unusual phenomena. Again, it is important to distinguish documented interests from later embellishments. Curiosity about science, philosophy, or spiritual questions was not uncommon in Brazil during the 1960s. It did not automatically imply involvement in dangerous or secretive activities. Nevertheless, these interests naturally became part of the investigation because detectives sought to understand every aspect of the men's lives. One line of inquiry examined whether the two technicians had participated in informal groups exploring electronics and spiritual concepts. Some witnesses described conversations involving attempts to communicate through electronic devices or discussions about extraordinary experiences. Such accounts reflected the intellectual atmosphere of the era, when rapid technological progress inspired many imaginative ideas. Researchers continue debating how significant these interests truly were. Some believe they played a central role in the events on Morro do Vintum. Others argue they have been exaggerated over time. The surviving evidence does not allow a definitive conclusion. Meanwhile, newspapers competed intensely for new information. Each morning brought fresh headlines. Some articles reported confirmed investigative findings. Others ventured into speculation. One newspaper emphasized the mysterious note. Another focused on the lead masks. A third highlighted reports of unusual lights allegedly seen near the hill. The public followed each development with growing fascination. Within days, the lead mask's case had become national news. Soon, international publications also reported the story. The combination of science, mystery, and unexplained circumstances proved irresistible. With public attention came public theories. Letters arrived at newspaper offices. Readers proposed explanations ranging from elaborate criminal conspiracies to misunderstood scientific experiments. Some suggested accidental poisoning. Others imagined contact with extraterrestrial visitors. Still others believed the men had participated in a spiritual ritual that ended unexpectedly. Detectives evaluated each serious lead carefully. Most failed to withstand close examination. One challenge faced by investigators was separating sincere witness. Testimony from stories that emerged only after the case became famous. Human memory can be influenced by publicity. A person who reads dramatic newspaper accounts may later remember ordinary events differently. This phenomenon is well documented in psychology and affects many historical investigations. Detectives therefore placed greatest confidence in statements collected as early as possible, before extensive media coverage shaped public perception. Despite long hours of careful work, the investigation advanced slowly. Each answer seemed to generate new questions. The men had traveled willingly. There was no evidence they had been forced onto the hill. They had carried money. Personal belongings remained untouched. The notebook suggested preparation rather than spontaneity, yet preparation for what? No witness reported seeing another individual with them during their final known movements. No obvious motive emerged. The case resisted simple explanation. Even the weather became part of the discussion. Why the raincoats? Meteorological records suggested conditions had been generally fair. Perhaps the coats protected clothing during some planned activity. Perhaps they shielded against vegetation while climbing. Perhaps they simply reflected a precaution for changing weather. What had seemed like an ordinary purchase now carried enormous symbolic weight because investigators lacked enough evidence to place it in context. As the days turned into weeks, Morro do Ventum gradually returned to its quiet routine. The police completed their searches. Reporters departed. Birds returned to the grasses. The wind continued moving across the hillside just as it always had. Nature rarely remembers human mysteries. It simply continues. The hill remained beautiful, peaceful, silent. Yet for those involved in the investigation, every visit to the site recalled unanswered questions. Every path invited another look. Every rock suggested another possibility. Far below, the lights of Niterói reflected across Guanabara Bay. Evening ferries crossed calm waters. Families gathered in homes throughout the city. Life moved forward, as it always does, but inside police offices, folders continued growing thicker. Photographs, witness statements, maps, laboratory reports, receipts, handwritten notes. Each represented another attempt to understand to ordinary men whose final journey had become one of Brazil's most enduring mysteries. Perhaps the greatest lesson of the lead masks case is not that it offers extraordinary answers. Rather, it reminds us how difficult truth can be to recover once time begins to erase its traces. Evidence fades, witnesses grow older. Memories soften, documents disappear. What remains is the careful work of historians and investigators, patiently distinguishing established fact from appealing speculation. Sometimes certainty survives. Sometimes only questions remain. And sometimes, as on a quiet hillside overlooking the lights of Niterói, the wind becomes the only witness still present. Some mysteries are built around missing people. Others revolve around missing objects. The lead masks case became centered on something much smaller, a few handwritten lines, several ordinary purchases, and one word that investigators could never fully explain. Capsules. The notebook recovered on Morro do Ventum contained only a handful of instructions. Its pages were otherwise unremarkable. No elaborate diagrams. No lengthy explanations. No names. Just brief directions written in simple language. Yet those few lines would occupy investigators, journalists, and researchers for decades. The most widely accepted translation reads something like this: 4:30 p.m., be at the agreed location. 6:30 p.m., ingest capsules. After the effect, Protect metals, awaits signal. Mask. The wording appears practical, almost routine, as though the writer expected the reader to understand every instruction without further explanation. There are no emotional expressions. No uncertainty. No questions. Only a sequence of planned actions. Detectives immediately recognized that this note might represent the closest thing to a roadmap. If they could understand its meaning, perhaps they could understand everything else. But each line created more questions than answers. The first instruction appeared straightforward. Arrive at an agreed location. Investigators believed that location was most likely Morro do Vintum. The timing roughly matched the known movements reconstructed from witness statements. This portion of the note fit comfortably within the available evidence. The second instruction proved much more difficult. The capsules. No capsules were recovered at the scene. No packaging. No bottle. No paper wrapper. Nothing. Had they dissolved? Had someone removed them before the bodies were discovered? Had investigators simply overlooked them? Or had the note referred to something entirely different? No answer emerged. Medical examiners naturally considered poisoning. If the men had swallowed some unknown substance, perhaps it explained their deaths. However, forensic science in 1966 faced significant limitations. The passage of time between the deaths and the discovery of the bodies complicated toxicological testing. Environmental exposure further reduced the likelihood of identifying every possible substance. Reports from the period indicate that no conclusive poison was identified. This absence did not prove poisoning had not occurred. It simply meant investigators lacked sufficient evidence to establish it. This uncertainty became fertile ground for speculation. Over the years, books and documentaries proposed many possibilities. Some suggested hallucinogenic compounds. Others imagined experimental chemicals. A few even proposed radioactive materials or highly unusual substances. The historical record supports none of these claims conclusively. Researchers continue to emphasize that the identity of the supposed capsules remains unknown. The next line in the notebook has perhaps generated the greatest debate: protect metals. Or, depending upon the translation, protect metal. What exactly did this mean? Even native Portuguese speakers have debated subtle nuances in the wording. Was it an instruction concerning metallic equipment, the body, electronic devices, or something entirely symbolic? Investigators considered numerous interpretations. None proved definitive. Because Miguel and Manuel worked with electronics, some detectives wondered whether the phrase referred to technical equipment. Perhaps they expected exposure to bright light or heat. Perhaps they intended to shield instruments during an experiment. Others believed the lead-eye masks themselves represented the protection. Lead, after all, is a metal associated with shielding against certain forms of radiation. Could the masks have been intended to protect the eyes during observation of an intense light source? The idea sounded plausible, yet no physical evidence supported it directly. The final instructions were equally mysterious: await signal. Then simply, mask. The sequence suggested preparation. Almost as though the two men expected something to happen at a specific time. But what signal? A light, a sound, an electronic transmission, a visual event, or merely a prearranged cue from another person? The notebook did not explain. Investigators searched the men's homes, workshops. Personal belongings. Friends were interviewed, colleagues questioned. Police hoped to discover similar notebooks or earlier experiments that might place these instructions into context. They found evidence of technical interests, electronic components, notes related to their work, but nothing that clearly explained the cryptic message recovered on Moro du Vintum. Meanwhile, newspapers transformed the notebook into a national fascination. Photographs of the handwritten page appeared in countless publications. Readers attempted their own interpretations. Some believed the note represented scientific instructions. Others imagined secret societies. Still others saw evidence of communication with beings beyond Earth. The public imagination expanded far beyond the cautious conclusions investigators were prepared to make. One reason for this rapid speculation lay in the cultural atmosphere of the 1960s. Around the world, humanity stood on the edge of extraordinary technological achievement. Space exploration advanced rapidly. Satellites orbited Earth. Scientists discussed journeys to the moon. At the same time, popular culture embraced stories of unidentified flying objects and unexplained aerial phenomena. Reports of strange lights appeared regularly in newspapers. Most received ordinary explanations, some remained unresolved. Against this backdrop, any unusual case naturally attracted extraordinary theories. The lead masks case soon became connected with reports of unidentified lights seen over parts of Brazil. It is true that Brazil experienced several widely discussed reports of unusual aerial phenomena during the 1950s and 1960s. However, historians caution against assuming these reports were directly connected to Miguel and Manuel. The surviving evidence does not establish such a link. The association grew largely through later speculation rather than documented investigative findings. Detectives remained focused on simpler questions. Who wrote the notebook? The handwriting appeared consistent with notes believed to have been written by one of the two men. If so, then the instructions likely represented a plan they understood before leaving Compass. This suggested preparation rather than spontaneity, yet preparation for what purpose? Again, the evidence remained frustratingly incomplete. Family members struggled to understand the growing media attention. To them, Miguel and Manuel were not mysterious figures from newspaper headlines. They were husbands, friends, brothers, neighbors. Ordinary people whose sudden deaths had become the subject of worldwide speculation. The contrast between private grief and public fascination is common in famous historical cases. While readers seek mystery, families seek understanding. As investigators continued reviewing witness statements, they noticed something important. No credible evidence suggested the two men expected danger. Witnesses who encountered them described calm behavior. They appeared composed, organized, purposeful. Nothing indicated panic or fear. Whatever they intended to do on Moro du Vintum, available evidence suggests they approached it willingly. This observation significantly influenced later theories. Weeks passed. The notebook remained locked inside police evidence files. Experts reviewed it repeatedly. Each reading produced another possibility. Each possibility generated another question. Its simplicity became its greatest challenge. Long documents often reveal hidden patterns. Short notes leave far more room for interpretation. A few words can support many competing explanations. Without additional context, certainty remains impossible. Imagine the notebook resting alone beneath a desk lamp in a quiet police office. Outside, evening rain taps gently against the windows. Detectives read the same lines once more. They compare witness statements, study maps, review receipts. Search for one overlooked detail that might connect everything together. The room is silent except for the turning of pages. Hours pass, the note remains unchanged. Its meaning remains hidden. History contains many mysterious documents. Encrypted wartime messages, ancient manuscripts, lost journals. The lead mask's notebook belongs to a different category. Not because it is complex, but because it is almost painfully ordinary. A shopping list can be mysterious if no one knows what was purchased. A few simple instructions become extraordinary when no one understands their purpose. Perhaps that is why this small piece of paper continues to fascinate researchers today. It promises explanation, yet never quite delivers it. Outside the police station, life moved steadily forward. The ferries continued crossing Guanabara Bay. Markets remained busy. Children returned to school. Workshops repaired radios and televisions. The city slowly left the headlines behind. But inside the investigation files, the questions remained. The lead masks, the raincoats, the missing capsules, the quiet hill. And one notebook whose few carefully written lines refused to surrender their secret. The night deepened over Niterói. Street lights shimmered across wet pavement. A cool breeze drifted inland from the Atlantic. Somewhere beyond the city, Morro do Vintum stood quietly beneath the stars. Its grasses moved gently in the wind. Its paths lay empty. Nature offered no answers. Only silence. The same silence that had greeted investigators on the day they first climbed the hill. And perhaps the same silence that still waits there today. Every unsolved mystery reaches a moment when evidence begins to fade. The investigation continues. Detectives keep searching. Witnesses answer more questions. Experts examine every object once again, but eventually the pace changes. New discoveries become less frequent. Fresh answers become harder to find. Into that growing silence, another force quietly enters. Theory. Human beings naturally seek patterns. When information is incomplete, the mind tries to complete the picture. Sometimes those conclusions prove correct. Sometimes they drift far beyond the available evidence. The lead mask's case would soon become a remarkable example of both. Only days after the discovery on Morro do Vintum, newspapers across Brazil began publishing increasingly imaginative explanations. Some reports remained cautious. They summarized the known facts. To electronics technicians, a quiet hillside. Homemade lead-eye masks, a cryptic notebook. No confirmed cause of death. Other publications chose a different path. Large headlines hinted at hidden experiments, secret organizations, or encounters with unknown forces. Editors understood that mystery sold newspapers. Readers wanted answers. When no answers existed, speculation often filled the empty space. For the detectives leading the investigation, this created a difficult balance. Public interest sometimes produced valuable information. New witnesses came forward. People remembered conversations they had previously dismissed as unimportant. Old acquaintances contacted the police. Every genuine lead deserved careful attention. But sensational reporting also produced countless false leads. Rumors spread quickly. Stories changed with every retelling. Separating fact from imagination became nearly as challenging as solving the mystery itself. One of the earliest theories focused on science rather than crime. Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz were electronics technicians. They understood circuits, radio equipment, and electrical systems. Could they have been conducting a private experiment? Perhaps they hoped to observe an unusual atmospheric event. Perhaps they expected an intense flash of light. Perhaps the lead masks were intended to protect their eyes. Investigators considered this possibility seriously. After all, the men possessed technical knowledge. The notebook appeared methodical. The raincoats might even have protected clothing during outdoor work, yet the theory faced a major obstacle. No equipment was recovered that clearly supported such an experiment. No measuring instruments, no recording devices. No obvious scientific apparatus. If an experiment had taken place, its purpose remained invisible. Another explanation centered on accidental poisoning. The notebook instructed the men to ingest capsules. If those capsules contained an unknown substance, perhaps the tragedy resulted from an unexpected reaction. This idea appealed to many investigators because it required no elaborate conspiracy. Unfortunately, it also lacked direct evidence. The capsules were never recovered. Laboratory examinations could not identify a definitive toxic substance. Without physical proof, the hypothesis remained plausible but unconfirmed. As weeks passed, journalists began exploring another aspect of the men's lives. Friends had described Miguel and Manuel as curious about spiritual ideas. This detail quickly attracted public attention. Brazil possessed, and still possesses, a rich tradition of spiritual exploration. Many citizens participated in study groups discussing consciousness, life after death, and philosophical questions about existence. Most of these gatherings were peaceful, thoughtful, and entirely lawful. Yet newspaper stories often blurred the distinction between ordinary spiritual discussion and sensational mystery. Some articles suggested that the two technicians had been attempting to contact beings from another dimension. Others hinted at secret rituals. Historical evidence, however, remains far more restrained than many later retellings. The 1960s were also an era of extraordinary fascination with the possibility of life beyond Earth. Only a few years earlier, astronauts had begun orbiting our planet. Spacecraft traveled farther into the solar system. Science fiction filled bookstores and cinema screens. Reports of unidentified flying objects appeared in newspapers around the world. Brazil itself had experienced several widely discussed sightings during the previous decade. Most received ordinary explanations. A handful remained unexplained because of this cultural atmosphere. It did not take long before some writers proposed a connection between the lead masks case and unidentified aerial phenomena. Investigators found no evidence directly linking the deaths to such reports. Nevertheless, the idea captured public imagination. Once introduced, it proved remarkably difficult to separate from the historical narrative. One frequently repeated claim involved reports of unusual lights near Morro do Vintum on the evening in question. Some later accounts describe witnesses observing brilliant glowing objects above the hill. Others mention strange beams or luminous clouds. Historians urge caution. While a few witnesses did report seeing unusual lights around that period, the timing, reliability, and relevance of these accounts remain uncertain. No verified evidence demonstrates that such observations were connected to Miguel and Manuel. The distinction between reported and confirmed is essential. In famous mysteries, those two categories are often confused. Psychologists studying historical investigations have noted another interesting phenomenon. Once a case becomes famous, later witnesses sometimes reinterpret ordinary memories through the lens of publicity. A distant light that once seemed insignificant may later appear mysterious. An ordinary conversation may acquire new meaning after dramatic headlines appear. This does not necessarily imply dishonesty. Human memory is reconstructive. We naturally organize experiences into stories that make sense. The greater the mystery, the stronger that tendency becomes. Meanwhile, the detectives continued their patient work. They interviewed colleagues from the electronics workshop, neighbors, relatives, friends. Every conversation added another small piece to the portrait of the two men. Again and again, similar themes emerged. They were reliable, technically skilled, curious, respectful. No evidence suggested involvement in organized crime. No substantial financial motive emerged. No convincing personal conflict explained their deaths. The absence of an obvious motive deepened the mystery. The lead masks themselves remained perhaps the most iconic element of the entire case. Researchers carefully measured them, examined the cut edges, studied their construction. They appeared homemade, functional rather than decorative. Their simplicity made them strangely unsettling. Had investigators found elaborate helmets with wires and electronics, perhaps an experiment would have seemed obvious. Instead, the masks looked almost primitive. Just thin pieces of lead shaped to cover the eyes. Their modest appearance somehow made them even more mysterious. Outside the investigation, the story took on a life of its own. Magazines published illustrations. Radio commentators debated theories late into the evening. Readers wrote letters proposing explanations. Some insisted the answer lay in science. Others believed the mystery pointed towards spiritual experiences beyond ordinary understanding. Still others argued that the simplest explanation, an accident during a private experiment, remained the most likely. Each viewpoint reflected not only the evidence but also the beliefs of those interpreting it. Years later, historians would recognize that the lead masks case revealed something profound about human nature. When confronted with uncertainty, people often reveal their own assumptions. Scientists search for technical explanations. Police seek criminal motives. Spiritual thinkers explore philosophical possibilities. Journalists pursue compelling narratives. None of these approaches is inherently wrong, but each emphasizes different aspects of the same evidence. The mystery itself remains unchanged. Only the lens through which it is viewed changes. Imagine the detectives working late into another quiet evening. A single desk lamp illuminates stacks of reports. Outside, rain taps gently against the windows. Coffee grows cold beside open notebooks. Maps of Niterói cover the table. Photographs from Morro do Vintum lie carefully arranged in chronological order. One detective reads the notebook again. Another studies witness statements. Neither speaks for several minutes. Not because there is nothing to say, but because every possibility has already been discussed. The room fills with thoughtful silence. Sometimes an investigation advances through conversation. Sometimes it advances through quiet reflection. Far above the city, Morro do Vintum remains exactly as it was before the mystery began. The grasses continue to sway in the Atlantic breeze. Birds cross the sky without awareness of history. The rocky paths wait for hikers. Nature has little interest in human questions. It keeps no records, offers no testimony. The hill simply exists, beautiful, peaceful, silent. As autumn slowly gave way to another season, investigators understood a difficult truth. Some mysteries surrender quickly. Others resist every effort to explain them. The lead masks case belonged to the second kind. Every confirmed fact had been carefully examined, every witness interviewed. Every object studied, yet certainty remained just beyond reach. Like a distant light seen across calm water, always visible, never quite attainable. And so the story continued, not toward a dramatic revelation, but toward the long, patient work of history itself, where evidence would be revisited, old theories reconsidered. New generations of researchers would ask familiar questions, hoping that time, rather than haste, might finally illuminate what the first investigators could not. The night settled quietly over Niterói. The bay reflected thousands of city lights. The wind whispered across Morro do Vintum. And somewhere within the silence, the mystery endured. Waiting, not for belief, not for legend, but for understanding. Every generation inherits its mysteries. Some are solved within months, others remain unanswered for decades. A few continue long enough that the investigators themselves are gone, their reports resting quietly inside archives while new researchers study the same photographs, the same witness statements, and the same pieces of evidence. The lead masks case belongs to this rare group. More than half a century has passed since Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz climbed Morro do Vintum. The hillside remains. The city has grown. Technology has transformed nearly every aspect of modern life. Yet the essential questions remain remarkably unchanged. What happened? Why were they there? And why did no explanation ever fully satisfy the evidence? Modern historians often begin not by asking what is extraordinary, but by asking what is firmly established. Before considering theories, they separate confirmed facts from assumptions. This process may seem less exciting than dramatic speculation, but it is the foundation of historical research. The confirmed facts are surprisingly few. 2 electronics technicians traveled from Campos dos Goitacazes to Niterói. They purchased raincoats and mineral water. They climbed Morro do Vintum. They were later found deceased, wearing homemade lead-eye masks. A notebook contained brief instructions mentioning capsules, a signal, and masks. No definitive cause of death was established. Everything beyond these points requires interpretation. The first major theory remains the simplest: an accidental poisoning. Many researchers continue to view this as one of the most plausible explanations. If the capsules mentioned in the notebook contained a dangerous substance, the tragedy could have resulted from an unexpected reaction. Perhaps the dosage was incorrect. Perhaps the contents differed from what the men expected. Perhaps they underestimated the risks. The difficulty, however, remains the same today as it was in 1966. No capsules were recovered. No chemical analysis identified the missing substance. Without physical evidence, the theory cannot be confirmed. Still, many investigators regard it as a reasonable possibility because it requires the fewest assumptions. Another explanation focuses on experimental activity. Miguel and Manuel possess technical knowledge. Friends described them as curious individuals. The notebook resembled procedural instructions. Some researchers suggest the men intended to perform an electronics experiment involving bright light or another natural phenomenon. In this interpretation, the lead masks protected the eyes while the raincoats shielded clothing or equipment. Yet once again, the evidence remains incomplete. No specialized instruments were recovered from the scene. No detailed experimental notes survived. The idea is possible. It is not proven. During the 1950s and 1960s, Brazil experienced widespread interest in spiritism and related movements. Many groups explored meditation, consciousness, and the possibility of communication beyond ordinary human experience. Historical records indicate that Miguel and Manuel were interested in some of these discussions. Some authors therefore suggest the two men participated in a planned spiritual exercise involving the mysterious capsules. This interpretation attempts to explain the notebook's structured instructions, yet it also faces significant limitations. No surviving evidence demonstrates precisely what activity they intended to undertake. The notebooks recovered do not describe a ritual, nor do they identify a group directing their actions. The connection remains suggestive rather than conclusive. Perhaps no theory has attracted greater public attention than the possibility of unidentified aerial phenomena. The idea emerged almost immediately after newspapers reported the discovery of the lead masks. Stories of unusual lights near Niterói circulated widely. Books published years later expanded these accounts further, sometimes presenting speculation as though it were established fact. Modern historians approach these claims with caution. Brazil has indeed documented numerous reports of unusual aerial observations throughout its history. Some remain unexplained. However, no verified evidence directly links such reports to the deaths of Miguel and Manuel. The timing, witness reliability, and physical evidence do not allow investigators to establish a causal connection. The possibility remains part of popular culture. It has not become historical certainty. As researchers reviewed the original police files, another important observation emerged. There was no clear evidence of robbery or violence. Personal belongings remained. Money had not been taken. The notebook was still present. The masks remained in place. If another individual had been involved, that person left remarkably little trace. This absence of obvious criminal evidence distinguishes the lead mask's case from many other unsolved investigations. It neither proves nor disproves outside involvement. It simply leaves investigators with fewer clues than they would normally expect. Some modern forensic specialists have wondered whether advances in science might have changed the outcome. Today, investigators routinely analyze microscopic biological evidence, identify trace chemicals measured in billionths of a gram, and reconstruct events through digital modeling. Could today's laboratories solve the lead masks case? Perhaps not, or perhaps not. Much depends on the preservation of evidence. Unfortunately, several decades have passed. Some original materials have deteriorated, others are no longer available. Time itself has become one of the greatest obstacles. The notebook continues to receive particular attention. Linguists have examined its wording. Psychologists have analyzed its structure. Historians have compared it with notes from similar investigations. Interestingly, The writing resembles practical instructions rather than emotional reflections. There is no expression of fear, no farewell, no uncertainty. Whoever wrote those words expected the reader to understand them completely. That confidence suggests prior planning. It also suggests that the note was never intended for outsiders. Its audience consisted only of those already familiar with its meaning. When investigators later discovered it, they inherited instructions without context, a map without its legend. The lead masks themselves have inspired equally careful study. Some researchers note that lead can shield against certain forms of radiation. Others argue that the masks would provide only limited protection in such circumstances. Their design also lacks practical features expected in industrial safety equipment. No straps secure them firmly. No padding improves comfort. Their simplicity suggests they were created for one specific purpose known only to their makers. Whether that purpose was practical, symbolic, or experimental remains uncertain. Over time, the lead masks case has become more than a police investigation. It has become part of Brazilian cultural history. Documentaries revisit the evidence. Journalists interview historians. Writers continue proposing new interpretations. The mystery survives not because extraordinary explanations have been proven, but because ordinary explanations have never been fully demonstrated. That distinction is important. An unsolved mystery does not automatically confirm remarkable theories. It simply reminds us that human knowledge has limits. There is something quietly humbling about that realization. Modern society often expects every question to produce an answer. Search engines retrieve information instantly. Satellites observe nearly every corner of the Earth. Computers process unimaginable amounts of data. Yet some mysteries remain untouched by technological progress. Not because the answers are impossible, but because the necessary evidence disappeared long ago. History sometimes asks questions that science alone cannot fully answer. Imagine entering a climate-controlled archive late in the evening. Rows of gray storage boxes line the shelves. Inside one rests a copy of the original investigation photographs. Witness statements. Maps. Laboratory reports. The notebook. A researcher carefully lifts each page, wearing cotton gloves to preserve the aging paper. Outside, rain falls softly against the building. The city beyond continues its ordinary rhythm. Cars pass. People return home from work. Children finish homework. Life moves forward inside the archive. However, time feels different. Every document belongs to another era. Every sentence carries the hope that one overlooked detail might finally reveal the truth. Hours pass. The researcher closes the final folder. No dramatic discovery has appeared. No forgotten confession. No hidden evidence. Only the same quiet realization reached by generations before. The lead masks case remains unresolved. Not because no one cared enough to investigate. Quite the opposite. It remains unresolved because the available evidence has never been sufficient to answer every question with confidence. Sometimes history leaves us certainty. Sometimes it leaves us mystery. Outside, dawn slowly approaches over Guanabara Bay. The first light touches the water. Fishing boats leave the harbor. The hills surrounding Niterói glow softly beneath the rising sun. Among them stands Morro do Vintum, peaceful, green, unchanged in many ways since 1966. Visitors who climb its paths today may know its famous story. Or they may simply admire the remarkable view stretching toward Rio de Janeiro. The hill asks nothing of those who visit. It offers no explanation. Only silence. The same silence that greeted investigators so many years ago. The same silence that continues to invite careful thought rather than hurried conclusions. History teaches many lessons. Some concern triumph. Others warn against repeating past mistakes. The lead mask's case offers a different lesson. It reminds us that curiosity is valuable, but humility is equally important. There are moments when the honest answer is not certainty. It is simply, we do not yet know. And perhaps that quiet honesty is the most enduring mystery of all. There is something remarkable about places where history leaves behind unanswered questions. Long after investigators pack away their files, long after newspaper presses fall silent, long after witnesses grow old, the places themselves remain. They continue to greet the sunrise. They welcome the rain. They watch the passing seasons without revealing what they have seen. Morro do Vintum is one of those places. Nearly 60 years have passed since two electronics technicians climbed its winding paths. The city surrounding the hill has changed. Roads have widened. Neighborhoods have expanded. Technology has transformed daily life. Yet the hillside remains surprisingly familiar. The wind still moves through the grass. The birds still circle above the trees. The same panoramic view stretches across Guanabara Bay. To someone standing there today, it is difficult to imagine that this peaceful landscape became the setting for one of Brazil's most enduring mysteries. Unlike many famous historical locations, Morro do Vintum was never designed to become a landmark. There are no grand monuments, no elaborate museum, no carefully marked trail explaining each event. Most visitors arrive simply because they enjoy the scenery. Some know nothing about the lead mask's case until someone mentions it. Others climb the hill specifically because they have read books or watched documentaries. For each visitor, the experience is different, yet almost everyone notices the same thing: the silence. Some know nothing about the lead mask's case until someone mentions it. Others climb the hill specifically because they have read books or watched documentaries. For each visitor, the experience is different, yet almost everyone notices the same thing: the silence. Cities possess many different sounds. Traffic. Conversations. Construction. Music. The distant call of street vendors. But hills often soften those sounds. Standing high above Niterói, the city seems farther away than it truly is. The noise becomes gentle. The breeze carries only fragments of everyday life. It is easy to understand why investigators once appreciated the hill's isolation. It is equally easy to understand why later storytellers imagined it as a place where unusual events might occur. Nature often encourages reflection. Silence invites imagination. Over the decades, the lead mask's case slowly passed from breaking news into history, then from history into folklore. This transformation happens more often than many people realize. At first, newspapers report verified facts. Later, magazines add dramatic details. Books expand upon uncertain accounts. Television documentaries introduce visual recreations. Finally, the internet repeats countless versions of the same story, some carefully researched, others highly fictionalized. Each retelling changes the mystery a little. Small uncertainties become confident statements, rumors become facts, possibilities become conclusions. The original investigation becomes harder to recognize beneath layers of storytelling. Modern historians therefore approach famous mysteries with patience rather than asking, "What is the most exciting explanation?" They ask, "What can actually be demonstrated?" This distinction is essential. In the lead masks case, many widely repeated claims cannot be verified by surviving police records. Some documentaries mention secret organizations for which no convincing evidence exists. Others describe dramatic UFO encounters unsupported by contemporary investigative files. Still others introduce mysterious strangers who appear nowhere in the earliest witness interviews. Such additions may create compelling stories. They do not necessarily create reliable history. That does not mean the mystery loses its fascination. Quite the opposite. Sometimes reality is more compelling than fiction. The genuine historical facts remain extraordinary enough. Two experienced electronics technicians. A carefully planned journey, homemade lead-eye masks, a cryptic notebook. No confirmed cause of death. No proven motive. No definitive solution. These facts alone continue to challenge investigators. No embellishment is required. Researchers from many different disciplines have revisited the case. Criminologists study the investigative process. Psychologists examine witness memory. Historians compare original newspaper reports with surviving police documents. Forensic specialists consider whether modern scientific methods might have produced different results. Each field contributes valuable insights. Together, they demonstrate how one unresolved investigation can illuminate much broader questions about history, memory, and evidence. Interestingly, the lead masks case has also become a lesson in how public belief develops. When people encounter uncertainty, they often seek explanations consistent with their existing worldview. Those fascinated by technology may emphasize scientific experiments. Those interested in psychology explore altered states of consciousness. Those drawn to the paranormal focus on unexplained aerial phenomena. Each interpretation reflects not only the evidence but also the observer. The mystery becomes, in part, a mirror. Perhaps this explains why the case continues attracting attention after so many decades. It offers remarkably few conclusions. Instead, it invites careful thinking. Unlike fictional mysteries that conclude neatly in the final chapter, real investigations often end with incomplete knowledge. Evidence disappears. Witnesses disagree. Important documents are never created. History remains unfinished. That uncertainty can feel uncomfortable, yet it is also deeply human. Imagine returning to Morro do Ventum today. The climb remains gentle. The tropical sun warms the hillside. Children laugh somewhere below. A photographer pauses to capture the sweeping view across the bay. Nearby, another visitor quietly reads about the events of August 1966. Neither disturbs the peaceful atmosphere. The hill belongs equally to those who know its story and those who do not. Nature makes no distinction. As evening approaches, shadows lengthen across the grass just as they did decades ago. The Atlantic breeze becomes cooler. Lights gradually appear throughout Niterói. Across the water, Rio de Janeiro begins to sparkle beneath the fading sky. It is a breathtaking view. One that Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz almost certainly admired during their final hours. That simple realization reminds us of something easily forgotten. Before they became figures in an unsolved mystery, They were simply to ordinary men standing on a beautiful hill overlooking one of the world's great natural harbors. They were not legends. They were not symbols. They were people. Their families carried unanswered questions long after public attention moved elsewhere. For investigators, an unsolved case remains professionally frustrating. For relatives, it becomes deeply personal. Every missing answer represents a conversation that can never occur. Every unresolved detail leaves space for quiet wondering what truly happened. Could anything have been done differently? Will certainty ever arrive? These questions accompany many families affected by unsolved investigations around the world. The lead masks case is no exception. As the decades passed, newer mysteries captured public attention, headlines changed, technologies advanced. Generations grew older, yet from time to time, the lead masks case returned. A new documentary, a newspaper anniversary, a historian publishing fresh research. Each renewed public interest brought another opportunity to distinguish carefully documented evidence from colorful legend. Sometimes new readers were surprised. The historical record proved simultaneously simpler and more mysterious than popular retellings suggested. Late one evening, imagine a researcher standing alone on Morro do Vintum. The city glows beneath the stars. The notebook's words have been read countless times. The photographs carefully studied, every major theory thoughtfully considered. The researcher closes the notebook, looks toward the horizon, and realizes something profound. Perhaps the greatest mystery is not what happened. Perhaps it is why the story continues to resonate across generations. Why do certain unsolved cases remain alive in public memory while others quietly disappear? The answer may lie not in the evidence itself, but in the questions it leaves behind. Questions that encourage curiosity without demanding certainty. Questions that remind us how much remains unknown. The wind moves softly through the grass. The lights across Guanabara Bay shimmer upon calm water. Night settles gently over the hillside. Morro do Vintum stands exactly as it has 4 centuries before the events of 1966 and 4 decades afterward. Patient, quiet, watching another day come to an end. The mystery remains. Not because history refuses to answer, but because history sometimes speaks only in fragments. And those fragments ask us to listen carefully. To separate fact from speculation. To respect those whose lives became part of the story. And to accept that some chapters of the past may always remain unfinished. Time changes almost everything. Buildings rise where empty fields once stood, roads become wider. Children grow into grandparents. Entire generations pass without ever meeting the people whose names fill history books. Yet some mysteries seem almost untouched by time. They wait patiently, neither growing clearer nor disappearing completely. The lead masks case has become one of those rare mysteries. More than half a century has passed since Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz made their final journey. The world around their story has transformed beyond recognition. Humanity has walked upon the moon. The internet has connected continents in seconds. Modern laboratories can analyze evidence that investigators in 1966 could scarcely imagine. Yet, despite these extraordinary advances, the central questions surrounding Morro do Vintum remain remarkably similar. Not because no one has tried to answer them, but because some of the necessary pieces were lost almost from the beginning. History often resembles an unfinished puzzle. Most pieces remain, enough survive to reveal the general picture. But several important fragments have vanished forever. Without them, certainty becomes impossible. The lead masks case is one such puzzle. Researchers possess photographs, police reports, witness interviews, receipts from purchases, the handwritten notebook. Yet several crucial elements are missing. The capsules mentioned in the note, a confirmed cause of death, a complete explanation for the lead masks. Together, these missing pieces continue to shape every modern discussion. Throughout the decades, investigators, historians, journalists, and forensic specialists have revisited the evidence again and again. Interestingly, their conclusions often become more cautious rather than more dramatic. This is common in historical research. The closer scholars examine the original sources, the more clearly they recognize the difference between established fact and later storytelling. Some of the most sensational claims surrounding the lead masks case appear only years after the original investigation. Earlier documents are often quieter, more restrained, less certain. That restraint deserves respect. It reminds us that responsible investigation sometimes requires admitting what cannot yet be known. One of the strongest lessons offered by the case concerns the nature of evidence itself. Evidence rarely speaks clearly on its own. It must be interpreted. A notebook containing mysterious instructions may suggest careful planning, but it does not automatically reveal the purpose of that plan. A lead mask may appear unusual, yet unusual objects are not necessarily supernatural. A witness may sincerely remember seeing an unexplained light, yet sincere testimony alone cannot establish a direct connection. Each piece must be understood within its proper context. That patient process defines both good history and good investigation. Modern criminologists occasionally use the lead masks case as an educational example, not because it demonstrates investigative failure, rather because it illustrates the limitations investigators sometimes face. Even excellent detectives cannot recover evidence that no longer exists. Even advanced science cannot answer questions unsupported by physical proof. The absence of certainty does not imply incompetence. Sometimes the past simply withholds its final answer. There is also another, quieter lesson hidden within the story. When mysteries remain unsolved, the people involved can gradually become symbols instead of individuals. Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz are often remembered only as the men with the lead masks. Yet before August 1966, they lived ordinary lives. They repaired electronics, worked alongside colleagues, shared meals with family, made plans for the future. They laughed, learned new skills, solved everyday problems. Like millions of people around them, they carried hopes that rarely appear in official records. Remembering this restores an important human dimension to the case. Behind every famous mystery stand real lives. Imagine opening an old family photograph album. The pictures are slightly faded, edges softened by time. There are birthdays, vacations, friends smiling beside automobiles from another era. Nothing about those images suggests an enduring mystery. Nothing hints that historians decades later would study their lives with extraordinary attention. This contrast reminds us that history rarely announces itself while it is unfolding. Ordinary days become historical only in retrospect. Across Brazil, interest in the late Mask's case has never entirely disappeared. University researchers occasionally revisit original documents. Writers publish careful historical analyses. Documentary filmmakers return to Morro do Ventum, seeking to understand not only what happened but why the story continues to resonate. Some emphasize forensic questions. Others examine cultural history. Still others explore the relationship between memory and myth. Each perspective contributes another layer of understanding, not necessarily about the solution, but about the mystery itself. There is something almost paradoxical about unsolved cases. The less certain the conclusion, the longer public curiosity often survives. A solved investigation eventually reaches its final chapter. An unsolved one remains open. Each generation feels invited to reconsider the evidence. Perhaps someone will notice a detail overlooked before. Perhaps newly discovered documents will emerge from forgotten archives. Perhaps advances in historical research will illuminate a previously misunderstood witness statement. Hope quietly persists, even after many decades. Yet responsible historians balance hope with realism. Some evidence has almost certainly disappeared forever. Paper deteriorates, witnesses pass away, physical objects become lost. The passage of time, while valuable for perspective, can also close doors permanently. Accepting that reality does not diminish the investigation. Instead, it encourages careful appreciation of what evidence still survives. As evening settles once more over Morro do Ventum, the hill appears almost timeless. The grasses ripple gently beneath the Atlantic breeze. The distant skyline of Rio de Janeiro glows beyond Guanabara Bay. Birds gradually fall silent as night approaches. Visitors standing there today often remark upon the peaceful atmosphere. It is difficult to reconcile such tranquility with one of Brazil's most enduring mysteries. Perhaps that contrast explains part of the story's lasting power. Beauty and uncertainty coexist. Calm and unanswered questions share the same landscape. Imagine arriving just before sunset. The air is warm but comfortable. Clouds drift slowly across a pale orange sky. The city below grows quieter as evening begins. You stand where investigators once stood, not searching for clues, not expecting revelation, simply observing the same hills, the same breeze, the same horizon. History feels strangely close. Not because the past returns, but because the landscape remembers without speaking. The greatest mysteries are not always the loudest. Some whisper. They encourage patience rather than excitement, reflection rather than fear. The Lead Mask's case belongs to this quieter tradition. Its power lies not in shocking discoveries, but in persistent uncertainty. A notebook with too few words, masks with no clear purpose. A journey with no confirmed destination. A hillside overlooking one of the world's most beautiful bays. Sometimes history does not leave behind dramatic answers. Sometimes it leaves only thoughtful questions. As darkness gently covers Morro do Ventum, the city lights become brighter. Ferries continue crossing Guanabara Bay just as they did in 1966. Families gather for evening meals. Children prepare for another school day. Life continues. The mystery remains, not as a source of fear, but as a quiet reminder that even in an age of remarkable knowledge, some chapters of human history remain unfinished. And perhaps that is why the lead masks case continues to endure. Not because it promises extraordinary certainty, but because it gently reminds us of the limits of certainty itself. The wind carries one final whisper across the hillside. The grass bends softly. The stars emerge above Brazil's eastern coast. And somewhere between history and memory, between evidence and imagination, the story patiently waits for those willing to read it carefully. Every story eventually reaches its final page. Some end with celebration, others conclude with sorrow. A few end with certainty, every question answered and every mystery explained. The lead masks case belongs to a different kind of ending. One without a final revelation. One without a hidden confession. One without a dramatic discovery waiting in the last chapter. Instead, it offers something quieter. A mystery that has remained remarkably unchanged despite the passing of nearly 6 decades. And perhaps, in its own way, that quiet ending is more powerful than certainty itself. As we have traveled through this story together, we have followed to ordinary men. Not famous explorers, not celebrated scientists, not public figures. Simply Miguel Jose Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz, electronics technicians from Compass dos Goitacazes, whose curiosity carried them toward a journey that history has never fully understood. Before August 1966, they lived ordinary lives. They repaired radios, worked alongside colleagues, shared meals with family, made plans for the future. They belong to a generation fascinated by technology, by the possibilities of science, and by questions that humanity has asked for centuries. What lies beyond what we know? What remains undiscovered? Those questions are not unusual. They are deeply human. The final documented facts remain remarkably simple. The 2 men traveled willingly to Niterói. They purchased raincoats and mineral water. They climbed Morro do Ventum. They carried a notebook containing carefully written instructions. They wore homemade lead masks over their eyes. Several days later, they were found exactly where history would forever remember them. Beyond these facts, certainty begins to fade. The capsules mentioned in the notebook were never recovered. Their contents remain unknown. No confirmed toxic substance was identified. The purpose of the lead masks has never been established. No definitive evidence of violence explained the tragedy. No convincing criminal motive emerged. No theory has successfully answered every question while remaining fully supported by the available evidence. That is the heart of the mystery, not that strange ideas exist, but that ordinary evidence remains incomplete. Throughout the decades, many explanations have been proposed. An unfortunate accident during a private experiment, an unexpected reaction to unknown capsules, a misunderstanding involving technical work, psychological factors, spiritual practices, reports of unusual lights. Each theory attempts to organize the surviving evidence into a coherent narrative. Each explains some details. None explains them all. Responsible historians, therefore, continue using careful language. Possible, plausible, unconfirmed. These words may seem less dramatic than certainty, yet they are the language of honest historical inquiry. The lead masks case has also become a lesson in another kind of mystery. Not the mystery of what happened on the hill, but the mystery of how stories evolved. Every generation retells remarkable events. Each retelling adds emphasis, removes uncertainty, introduces new interpretations. Gradually, folklore begins to intertwine with documented history. Separating the two becomes increasingly difficult. That is why returning to original evidence matters, not because it always produces answers, but because it reminds us where the boundary between knowledge and imagination truly lies. Imagine opening the original investigation file one final time. The paper has grown slightly yellow with age. Photographs remain carefully attached. Witness statements fill page after page. Receipts, maps, laboratory reports. And there, resting quietly among them, is the notebook. Its few handwritten lines have inspired decades of discussion. Yet the paper itself says no more today than it did in 1966. It simply waits, patiently, silently, for someone who can understand what its author assumed required no explanation. Outside the archive, the world has changed. People now carry powerful computers in their pockets. Spacecraft explore distant planets. Artificial intelligence assists scientific research. Medical laboratories perform analyses unimaginable to investigators in the 1960s. Yet despite these extraordinary achievements, the notebook remains as mysterious as ever. This is one of history's quiet ironies. Progress expands human knowledge enormously. Still, certain questions remain beyond its reach. Now imagine climbing Morro do Ventum one final time. The path winds gently upward. The air carries the scent of grass warmed by the afternoon sun. Small birds move between branches. The Atlantic breeze rises from Guanabara Bay. As you reach the summit, the city opens before you. Niterói stretches along the shoreline. Across the water, Rio de Janeiro glitters beneath the evening light. The mountains stand unchanged. The ocean reflects the sky in shades of gold and blue. It is breathtaking, peaceful, timeless. Nothing about the landscape suggests tragedy. Nothing demands fear, only quiet reflection. Stand there for a moment, listen carefully. The wind passes through the grass exactly as it did in August 1966. Clouds drift overhead. Boats cross the bay. Children laugh somewhere in the neighborhoods below. Life continues. Generation after generation. The hill asks nothing of those who visit. It offers no hidden message, no supernatural revelation. Only the reminder that history is sometimes written not with certainty, but with questions. Perhaps that is why the lead masks case continues to fascinate researchers around the world. Not because it proves extraordinary claims. It does not, nor because it disproves them. It cannot. Instead, it occupies a rare place between explanation and uncertainty. A place where careful investigation meets the limits of available evidence, where curiosity survives alongside humility, where the most honest conclusion remains. We simply do not know. And sometimes that answer is enough. As night slowly settles over Brazil, lights begin appearing across Guanabara Bay. Fishing boats return to harbor. Restaurants welcome their final guests. Families gather around evening tables. The city breathes with the comforting rhythm of ordinary life. Above it all, Morro do Ventum grows quiet once more. The grasses sway gently beneath the stars. The hillside, like history itself, keeps its silence. Not out of secrecy, but because some moments leave behind fewer answers than questions. Long after newspapers stopped printing headlines, long after detectives completed their reports. Long after the witnesses shared their memories, the mystery remained. Not because it demanded belief, but because it invited reflection. It reminds us that every historical investigation is also a human story, a story about curiosity, about hope, about careful observation, and about the humility to admit that not every puzzle can be completed. Tonight, the Atlantic Ocean continues its endless conversation with the shore. The wind still crosses the green hills of Niterói. The stars shine over Brazil exactly as they did on that August evening nearly 60 years ago. Time has carried away many things, but it has not carried away the mystery. Nor has it erased the memory of the two men whose final journey became part of history. May they be remembered not simply for the unanswered questions they left behind, but as to ordinary people whose lives deserve the same dignity and respect as any others. The piano grows quieter, the breeze becomes softer. The lights across the bay blur gently into the night. Above Morro do Vintém da Silência, watching over a hill that has kept its secret for generations. And somewhere within that peaceful silence, the story finally comes to rest.